Welcome to another piping hot fresh episode of the Cyber Mettle Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Omar Sangurima, joined as ever by Alyson Laderman.
Well, hey, Omar, let's jump into this one. This one's going to be a lot of fun. So with the usual disclaimer of, though, I'm a lawyer and he's a cybersecurity consultant and expert, we are not your lawyer and consultant expert. But for the purpose of the podcast, we will share with you our information, wisdom, and things that we have learned through experience over the years so that you can hopefully make sound choices for you and your business. How's that sound?
Sound choices are always the key, or at least you can be prepared to make sound choices. Because as many of my family would say, we give you all the advice, and you go do dumb stuff anyway. I'm sorry, it's just
some people have to learn by touching the hot stove. It just is.
That's me.
You got to burn yourself
intellectually, physically as well. The whole time, it's at 100% me, and I'm also seeing it now in the mini me. Right, my wife says many times, "That's you as a young package." With less temerity. And I said, yeah, imagine how I was younger. She's like, oh, we wouldn't have hung out. And I said, I told you back in the day, if we'd met younger, I don't think we would have hung out. I need a little seasoning, a little more mellowing out here. But one of the things that I've always been very grateful for, it's just so happened that there's always been folks in the legal profession, lawyers as coworkers, lawyers as friends, some lawyers in the family. For me personally, hearing the customary or the stupid jokes, right? Like, all the lawyers, I never quite understood why, because I've always been privileged to have amazing, folks in the legal profession, in my corner, in my circle. One of my best friends, and this will be a shout out, she listens, one of my best work experience colleague associates, because one day I didn't say we were friends, and she'll never let me live it down. She's absolutely my best friend at work, but she is a lawyer, and that's where I learned the disclaimer, because on many calls, I am a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer in this capacity. Here you go. That's why it's something grounding to me, starting a convo with that, because I spent many years on work calls hearing that as the first thing we have to get out before we could discuss business. Where does this come from? Why do you think there's that bad reputation hanging over, a wonderful group of folks?
So if the audience hasn't figured it out today, we are having a tough conversation, and the tough conversation is why you should have lawyers as friends, right? Why lawyers are really not your enemy. So Omar did a great segue getting right in there, and exactly. just to make it absolutely clear what we're going to talk about today.
It's a tough conversation, but it's near to my heart, because I hate bullies, and I feel like the profession gets a bad rep.
You know why? Because we're the ones that have to tell you no. Generally, lawyers are the gatekeepers, and we're the bearers of bad news, because the reality is this: if you're calling a lawyer who is generally relatively pricey, right? Because they have a certain level of knowledge and education and experience and ability to help you navigate tough legal things. If you're generally calling a lawyer, it's because something went horribly wrong. Generally, not always. There are happy moments like adoption when you're, that type of scenario. But if you're calling for a prenup or a divorce, or suing a business partner, or dealing with somebody who sued your business because they got hurt on your premises, you're not calling for a good time. And so we easily get associated with, or you got arrested, right? Let's be real. Or your kid got arrested.
Exactly.
Little Jimmy went off to the paddy wagon. Not to really age my references there, but
you get the I'm right there with you. Like, I understood that whole. Oh, that's reminding.
P.S. Neither of us are over the age of 50 as we record this, so we're really not that old, but we have old souls. We'll just go with it.
Older. That's always, absolutely.
Yeah, we haven't been alive for 50 years, and yet I have touched 5 different decades. Okay, I feel old.
Madness.
But no, if you're calling a lawyer, generally it's because something went terribly wrong, and they're the ones that are going to have to give you the good, bad, and the ugly, and nobody wants to hear it. And nobody wants to have to pay to hear that they were wrong, or that they owe somebody something, or that they're not going to get what they want out of this, right? And if people actually hired lawyers preventatively, prophylactically at the beginning, and reached out to those homie friends and said, hey, I'm considering about going into business with this person, and putting the right paperwork in place to allow for that relationship, and having the tough conversations of, how are we going to dissolve this if and when the time comes? Because there will always be a time, and you want to hope
Mhm.
there isn't, but you want to plan for it ahead of time. If you deal with it on the front end, one, it's going to be cheaper, right?
Mm.
And it's a much more pleasant experience. If you go into business hypothetically with a friend and it's a handshake of, oh yeah, we're just going to do the thing. And I just used ChatGPT to make our incorporation documents. And we filed it quickly with insert state here for X amount of dollars. And look at that. Ha ha ha. We didn't pay the lawyers. I can tell you from having helped people through this, and not because I'm being money grubbing, I cut my bills all the time and try to network and my hourly rates trying to help people. It is extremely expensive to litigate it on the back end. You don't know
Mm.
how the other person's going to react. You don't know if you have to chase them down. You don't know if you have to serve people out of state. You don't know what your discovery process is, where that's where you fact find and look for the evidence and what that's going to look like in the analysis. You don't know what hearings are going to look like. And you don't know what opposing counsel is going to look like, right, on the other side. And I
Mm.
think that's part of it, right? People forget that lawyers are paid to essentially dismantle the other side's position and advocate for ours, and to advocate for you're a hired gun to represent within the realm of the laws, within the ethics, and within certain guidelines. And not everybody operates in that same way as they do it. And so, you may see that other lawyer, quote, coming after you, but they're just representing their client's interests. And it's really
Mm.
hard to see it from that perspective, because honestly, it sucks to be on the other end of a deposition. It sucks to be on the other end of being interrogated in an interview session or in a courtroom under oath, right?
Mm.
Everything you say is going to be, can and will be held against you. That is very true. And lawyers tend to be wordsmiths. That's why you pay us money to parse those words and to find the nuances and the application and the context. And you may say something and go, well, I meant it this way, but what you said wasn't what you meant, because you're not using the words you think, that's where I think lawyers get a really bad reputation. It also doesn't help that a lot of media over the years, right, put us out as we're the bloodsuckers, we're the villains. I mean, I did an entire paper in undergrad where every paragraph was a lawyer joke. I started with a lawyer joke in every one of them and then broke it down, right, for this
Sure.
particular, and I'm trying to think of what the class was, but I remember putting a lawyer joke all the way through my entire
Oh,
paper
wow.
and made my professor laugh and cringe at the same time. I still have it here somewhere. So I
Yeah.
think part of it is, I would tell my clients when I represented businesses, pay me to be your bad guy.
Mm.
If you need to tell your partner, look, the lawyer's making me do it.
Sure.
That's just the job. That's part of the job. We understand that. We
Mm.
understand that sometimes you need that buffer with a partner and somebody else so that you're not the one having to make the decision. And then we look like the jerk, not the word I was going to use, but it was
Sure.
going to start with an A, but we look like the jerk, right? And that's okay, because we get it, but it doesn't mean it's not exhausting for the lawyers, especially when people come at you all the time with that same energy. We all have a role to play. And when you are paid to be an advocate,
Mhm.
even sometimes as part of being an advocate, say you hire me and you're like, I want to do X, Y, and Z. And I've got to look at you and say, I'm sorry, Omar, the law isn't going to let you do those things. And that's a conflict of interest for you or your organization, or you're breaching your duty of loyalty to your organization or whatever. Oh, you can't
Mm.
breach that duty, your NDA, your non-disclosure agreement, or your confidentiality agreement. It may suck, but I've got to be the bearer of bad news, because if you just go running down that path, now you've got to hire somebody when somebody sues to enforce that contract against you, and you've actively taken steps that are in violation of it. It's our duty to help you not touch the hot stove.
Mm.
But ultimately, you make the choice as the client, right? And whether or not you like what I have to say,
Mhm.
you as the client get to make that choice. But I think that's where a lot of the bad rep, it's a bit of, we look like the villains in media. Oh, the scum sucking lawyer. Oh, the one that did this, that.
Mhm.
There are good portrayals of lawyers in films and stuff as well, but they're not as fun. We like the villain. We like seeing the what's his name? Sal Goodman. Is that the name, last name?
Saul
Better Call
Goodman.
Saul. Yeah.
Better Call Saul.
Right.
Yes.
We love seeing stuff like that. It's entertaining. And so we do play those roles, especially because we are the ones that have to give you, we talk about death. We talk
Mm.
about criminal charges. We talk about accidents and disputes and fights, and you bring us in when you need help. And so that's a hard position to be in and not take the brunt of it. And yet we know, I mean, if you're getting divorced, hypothetically, right? The other side is automatically going to look like a jerk to you,
Sure.
right? Because they're pushing the person that you are emotionally tied to or were at some
Mm,
point, and in a difficult, heated, emotionally disturbing situation for you. And they're now saying, well, we got to talk about money, right? Because what are you going to split? You're splitting
mm.
stuff, you're splitting kids, you're splitting families, you're splitting property, you're splitting animals. Hopefully, you're not really splitting an animal, although I've seen timeshare with animals, but keep your animals alive, folks.
Oh, wow.
But I mean, you're having to make those tough decisions, and the other side wants what they want, and you want what you want. And in the
Mm.
side, you've got your own hired warriors to represent you. And that makes it tough. But I know your experiences had been very different than that with lawyers. And so you always kid that you have lawyers as homies.
Yeah,
What are some of those positive interactions that you've had because you have lawyers that you haven't treated as enemies? I guess that's the other part of it, right? Is
sure.
you work with lawyers as part of your business.
Hmm.
And for that experience for you, how have you been how has that been valuable to not see them as the gatekeeper keeping you out, but
Mm.
instead as somebody who is trying to help you navigate a tricky situation that you may not like the answer to, but they're really a member of your team?
I think I'm seeing, you've helped me, I think, elucidate why I've always felt a kinship to that profession. And it's almost, you started giving me, I'll get into the direct question in a second, but like you're giving me a mental image of, lawyers, cyber folks, some auditors. We should all just form a club because we're part of the aspects of business that
Yep.
get viewed in a very similar vein. A lot of the things you were talking about in terms of we're the bearers of bad news. We have to tell you no. We have to give you the guardrails within which you can play and tell you if you go outside of them, bad stuff's going to happen. Sounds very similar to what your cyber architects, your engineers, your auditors, GRC folks have to do for a business as well. So it just, and never truly, right? We're seeing it live or recorded live here. The light bulb hadn't clicked in terms of why I felt so much kinship there. Also on the personal note, the folks, I've always been intrigued by nuance, digging into meanings of things. My first stab at undergrad was a philosophy degree, so I really always loved, getting into things and unpacking what the meaning is inside of what it could be, where the blank spaces of meaning could hold. All
Mm.
sorts, just love that aspect of any endeavor. And so, as professional wordsmiths, as you say, which absolutely are to this day, if there's anything important that I need to send out corporate wise, I do not ask GPT. I ask my homie lawyer there, my lawyer who's a homie, and say, listen, take a look at this, Ari. Like, tell me, is it, zhuzh it up. And invariably, right? And probably one of the few times I'll ever say, I'm a learned doctor, have 3 master's degrees. I still go to her and say, listen, make this sound the best it can. And invariably, there's that level of skill and nuance. There's stuff that I miss. I should just absolutely. And I think that's where, like you said, in the professional context, you, having a guide in what we do, what I do with the DRC and what
Hmm.
we do in my department, having folks straight up say, listen, this is what the law says, and has that lens of what we do in the business, but also very steeped in the nuances of the law, is I feel as though walking into the situations that we do walk into in my 9 to 5 without that support would be like trying to fight somebody with one hand and one leg tied bound behind you. I couldn't imagine working in the space and with the data and for the organization that I work in and doing it as well as I do without being able to come back to. We have 2 lawyers on my team. The double the amount of expertise and as you say, different types of lawyers. So we
Hmm.
get even more looks and nuance there. Bring it in and go, okay, we're able to know a law is coming down the pipeline, change controls around or massage, enhance, drill down on things. We are so better prepared for what
Yes.
the industry is going to require of us. I've seen that in professional settings. On a personal setting, I running my first stab at buying a house. taking that contract and putting it in front of one of my friends who's a lawyer, same person, by the way. She helped me out immensely, and saying, I'm taking a giant risk, putting all my life savings. It was a terrifying situation, especially growing up how I grew up. You don't have people telling you how the hell to buy a house. I was the first person in my family to buy one. That should even say. I don't say that a lot. I was the first person, mom, dad, me, my sister, first Sangurima to buy a house. And of course, I was going to avail myself of every tool that I had at my disposal. I couldn't imagine, again, having that around you, having that amazing weapon, that amazing tool, that amazing set of knowledge, that professional nuance that you bring to the table that you should be getting paid for. Which is odd because, like you said, it's weird that I'm this much of a fan of lawyers, truly, having grown up where I grew up, right? Sometimes seeing it on the wrong side of things, and having to call it. But it just always struck me as y'all knew the rules of the game, whatever game we happen to be playing. So why the hell wouldn't I want somebody on my team that could tell me, okay, you can do this, you can do that. And then I can get creative in between, but give me the guardrails. So professionally and personally, I think it's been invaluable.
And you hit on a few things that I would definitely love to touch on there. And thank you for sharing all of that. Honestly, it helps for people to understand that perspective because one of the things you'd mentioned, like, different lawyers have different skills and you happen to have two on your staff. And, though I am a lawyer, right, and I've got more than 2 decades of experience, even I hire outside counsel for our company for specific things because it's outside my wheelhouse. And so what people don't realize is, you go to law school, you can technically practice in any area of law. But if I am a specialist in criminal law, you probably don't want me handling your antitrust violation unless I'm in that area, or your privacy policies if I've never looked at one, or a web disclaimer in my life would not be something you would want me to do, or your employment litigation, right? They all have specific nuanced areas. And funny enough, that's very similar to the medical practice and very similar to cybersecurity. So when people go to school to be a doctor, you probably don't want your proctologist doing your brain surgery.
Yes.
Although it could be interchangeable for some people.
Person. That's right. Yep. I thought of the same thing.
Sorry, couldn't resist it. Lawyer jokes, doctor jokes.
It was right there.
It was right there. Within reach, in theory.
No,
but it's true, right? Different doctors have different skills, but same thing with cyber folk. And I use this to talk about people who are looking to get into the cyber profession in general, which is when they go, I want to get into cybersecurity. And I go, okay, what kind? And they're like, cybersecurity. I'm like, well, are you more into rules and regulations, like a governance side of GRC? Are you feeling a little bit more like you want to do some penetration testing? Are you good with coding? Are you good? You want to do some SOC analyst type of stuff? Are you more of an incident responder? What's the vibe? What's your flavor? And they don't realize, I'm like, look, it's just like a doctor or a lawyer. Pick a lane, play in it, see if you like it. If not, find another lane. But there's a very large umbrella of which there's lots of different options underneath that main umbrella. And so finding the right lawyer for the right, it's the right tool for the right job. It's, your IT guy isn't always going to be your cyber guy, and probably shouldn't unless they're specifically trained in that. A lot of companies don't realize IT doesn't mean cybersecurity, right? Unless your team is actually trained to do both type of thing because you're on a little budget or whatever. But just because they're IT doesn't mean they're also cyber, right? It's the logic fallacy there. And so lawyers are the same way. And I think for advice for anybody who is going through legal stuff, you always want to pick a lawyer you gel with, right? Find somebody that can communicate to you, that you understand, that you do respect, that you're willing to work with. If you all are not hitting it off right away, go find another lawyer. You need to find somebody who is going to be part of your team. And when people bring lawyers in-house, it has to be a good culture fit. It has to be able to work with what's going on in there. And that doesn't mean I'm going to give you the answer you want all the time, but you're going to at least understand, and we're going to have the same conversation, right? We're going to at least communicate in a way that makes sense. You can have the tough conversations, and with that same respect of, you may not like what I have to say, I may not like what you have to say, but it doesn't matter if we like it as long as we're able to have it openly and figure out a pathway forward, whatever that might be, right? And so that was one thing. The other thing is, I look at this as lawyer as part of your team is really, especially like with an organization that you work at, you've got two different lawyers with a different focus area. You've got different cyber folks at different skill levels, right? You've got your managers and different things. And when you put all of the little colors together and you take the kaleidoscope and you adjust it, you get that picture, right, of
Mm,
what you're looking to do. And it really only works when you put all of those pieces together and then shift them into focus. Are you really
mhm,
going to see that what that picture is for your organization? And so instead of seeing it as you're red, you're blue, you're green, you're orange, you're purple, and you're going, well, wait a minute, we need to see the whole rainbow. Then you've got to put them together and work in that way collaboratively to let everybody shine in the places that they're supposed to so that you can move forward in that way. I think a lot of people miss that. They just see the barrier. They don't see it as, well, yeah, I am telling you no about this thing, but it doesn't mean you can't consider it this other way, right? Don't be afraid to ask your lawyer, well, wait a minute. Well, then what can we do? What are the
mhm,
options moving forward? If that's a closed door, is there also a window available? And the answer might be, it's a partially open window. You could have some issue, but maybe less issue than had you walked
mhm,
through the door. And so there are other options. So instead of just hearing the no, feel comfortable enough with that lawyer to say, well, wait a minute. Well, then what is available? What can I do? Right. Because they don't know what's in your head. You don't know what's in their head. So unless
mm,
you get curious, unless you have those conversations, you're not going to know how those pieces really fit together. So those were kind of my two little thoughts just based on what you had said, is really understanding that we each have a different skill set. I have practiced a lot of different areas of law. I am definitely a
mm,
Jane of all trades. I use antitrust as an example because I actually took that class in law school and went, do not want to litigate that ever kind of thing. I've worked at family law attorneys and went, do not ever want to deal with that
mhm,
ever.
mhm,
I've worked on bankruptcy and criminal law and business disputes, and I've seen every which way something can go sideways.
mm,
And that's the other part of it. Though you have a lawyer that may know the law, if they don't have life experience, they're going to have it from a different filter than somebody else who has had different business experience, life experience, and those types of things. Because experience, of course, colors your vision and what you've seen and how it applies, right? If you've
mm,
argued in court enough times with a particular judge, you can't say for certain, oh, judge is going to do this. You never know what a
mm,
judge is going to do. They're human like everybody else. But you may know what the patterns are for things that they find more persuasive than not. Then you may be able to figure out those communication styles of, oh, they're more receptive to X, Y, and Z type of evidence. Or, if they see these types of cases, this is not going to go well for you, right? When I was
mm.
a public defender many, many moons ago, in particular, I had a state attorney who was one of those that you knew you had. I used to call him my pontificating pretentious peacock because he would
I like the
strut about the
alliteration.
courtroom
I
and
like
he'd
that.
love to ruffle his feathers and show
There
you
you go.
how
Yeah.
smart he was. And everybody's like, oh, he's such a jerk. I'm like, just let him do his thing.
Mm,
Let him do his thing. Once he's had his say, and as long as it's not, he had two types of cases. If it was domestic violence, it didn't matter. You were going to jail. Like that was
mm.
just, he is not into wife beating. Like if that happens, that is,
Well,
and I
that's
forgot what the other
heartening.
one.
I
Then
wanna
yeah,
say that's very hard. I
it
want
is.
I
He was
wanna
like,
vote on the side of not yet.
right. He was
Thumbs
like,
up.
I'm not going to give you an offer that doesn't involve jail time. I don't do people that beat up on their significant others or people that are smaller or whatever the case might be.
Mhm. Mm,
If it's two dudes duking out at a bar, probably not as bad. If it's an emotional entanglement relationship between two people
mhm,
and one was definitely a bigger and abusing the other, he
mm,
did not take kindly. And you just knew that you were not going to get a good offer. And so it's really knowing that audience and paying attention and being able to and that's where picking a lawyer also helps, right? Do they know that courtroom? Do they know the other lawyer they're interacting with? What is it that's coming down the pike? And being able to tap into that wealth of knowledge and experience. As we've talked about in other episodes, it doesn't suck to have a lawyer friend, God forbid, when you get to that point that somebody passes away or you are
mm.
navigating something. They may know other lawyers to refer you to. I
Yes.
just did this with a friend last night who is dealing with a situation and had a lawyer on it that they didn't hire, but someone else they were taking over handling of this issue for due to incapacitation.
Mm,
And was like, I don't think this lawyer is doing what they need to do. Do you know other people? Funny enough, I do. And in an area of town I don't live, right? This is in South Florida, not up here. I was like,
mm,
actually, I know who to send you to. And so she was able to have a conversation with that lawyer and get some help that was going to help move that matter forward where it was pretty stale before. Uh, we're a wealth of knowledge and resources, and genuinely we want to help. But just like artists, we don't like to be abused to ask to work for free all the time. I mean, it literally is our
There's
job.
there's
So
also that. I
yeah,
imagine just like the medical profession, just like now we're coming into the holidays, so there's
yep,
the trope of, I'm not gonna fix your computer,
right.
cousin, uncle,
Omar,
grandma, whatever.
could you come lock this down for me and check out my
Yeah,
security system? Yeah,
sure. Yeah,
yeah.
like in between bites of stuffing, because who eats the turkey? Team no turkey right here. But in between the bites of the stuffing there, what are you
No
doing?
turkey.
And imagine similar. I saw it with my sister in the medical profession. I
Yep.
definitely see it with the legal profession. And I
Yeah.
also see what you mentioned, which is the help and the trusted advice, even, hey, I might know somebody. That's also invaluable. I've benefited from that on my own. My family has as well, the image that keeps coming to mind is when I'm on calls and I have either one of these two folks, again, they're teammates, so I'm biased for sure, but just either one of these two folks on a call, I feel like, okay, the core team of the Avengers is on this call. We can handle whatever's going to come. I come in with the tech and the cyber knowledge. They're no slouches, and that's another thing that I want to harp on. Like you said, wealth of knowledge. But
Yeah.
when lawyers get into a field, they're gonna then start being, I think, as nasty and great as they can be in that field, in that niche, if this is where they want to. And I've seen over time where folks came in with some cyber knowledge, but definitely more on the legal side, and they've like the coachability and the learning and the zest for understanding more about the nuance in that particular field, in this case cyber, you can't beat that. I challenge any hiring folks that are looking for and have somebody come in with that legal background on their resume. You're not going to find too many folks that are going to say, hey, listen, give me a month and I'll become
Well, do you know
near
why
an
that
expert
is?
at something.
Do you know why that is?
Why?
I think Tom Hanks said it best. It was on Inside the Actors Studio, and they asked him, "What job would you never ever want to do, and why?" And he said, "I don't ever want to be a lawyer because they do homework for a living."
Yeah, I mean, you're
And
spot
that's
on. You
it.
hit the nail on the head.
We
That's what
are
it is,
we
yeah.
are taught. You know what the secret to law school is? You don't need 3 years. Okay, first of all,
No,
you need a year
3
of
years
just
is a
getting your
scam. Oh, no, heard
Yeah,
it here
it is a
first. No.
scam. I mean, I can't really say that. Hypothetically, it's a scam. No,
No.
look, I have my own opinions, and it's not the opinion of my company, and it's not the opinion of other lawyers, and so I'm just gonna
Same.
put that little caveat there. So, I don't know that you necessarily need 3 years, right? You need a year
Mm,
to figure out how to think like a lawyer, right?
mm,
And how to process and how to question and how to understand and research the law and apply it to facts. And what you're learning, ultimately, the secret of all of it is you really are learning to do homework for a living. It's shifting into that mindset of I can literally learn pretty much anything enough to be able to put a case together or to take a case apart and to
mm,
question a witness and move forward because we really do end up having to be a Jane of all trades. So, for example,
mm,
if I'm doing a construction law case, I really do need to know about scuppers and roofing and shingles and all of those things so that when I'm questioning an engineer, I have to research and understand, not as good as they are, because I'm not going to be the engineer. I didn't study that, but I've got to know enough to be able to ask the right questions and get the answers I need to
mm,
support my case. So we are taught to learn and adapt and keep learning. And it is a constant learning as you evolve in this, and you can shift fields, but it will take time. And so as long as you maintain that curiosity and
mm,
that interest in learning, you can shift into something like I found it to be an actual easy shift into the cyber field now. And I love it. And I learn every day and I've still got plenty to learn, right? I don't pretend I know everything about all the things, but I've definitely learned a lot in the last couple of years. And I found that to be a transition I very much enjoyed because like, oh, this is something I actually really, really like is the
mm,
business and the cyber and the people that are associated with it. It's a different world. And so I agree that if you can find somebody who has that legal background and that knowledge and the curiosity, yes. I think the second year of law school, quite frankly, we should be kind of like the UK. It should be a year hands-on of doing the job because what they teach you in law school isn't necessarily what's on the bar exam. And it's not in the practice of law necessarily, the hands-on. And the bar exam doesn't teach you the practice of law, right? The practice of law is what it is. It is the practice, meaning you keep trying till you get it right. And even then you're going to make mistakes. And then you figure out a way to fix the mistakes as you do it, because we're all human. Clients don't always tell you everything you need to know. And you make a best, just like a doctor, a best guess based on the information you have available to you at the time. And so for anybody who is dealing with a lawyer, I would suggest a few main things, right? To help you. This sounds like if you approach a lawyer in the wild, these are the things you need to know not to get bit.
I was thinking the same thing. Put your hand down and don't make sudden
approach
motion.
slowly, put a dollar bill out. No. I kid because I can, right? Who can I make fun of if not myself? But truly, if you want to have a good relationship with your lawyer, and I mean this sincerely, do not lie. Do not obfuscate the truth. Do not withhold information. Number one, this is why you're paying a lawyer, is attorney-client confidentiality. You have that one-on-one. They are the keeper of your secrets. Why do you think you pay them so much? So that they don't give it away and they can give you sound advice based on that information. And if you are withholding information, that will never end well for you. I can't tell you how many cases I would sit there and talk to my clients. And to be fair, I used to get their trust pretty early because they're sitting in jail and I was a public defender, and they would give me some garbage about, I want a real lawyer, not a public pretender. And I would look at them and go, oh, okay. Well, would you want one that went to a real law school? They go, yeah. I'm like the University of Miami? They go, yeah. And I'm like, that was editor-in-chief of a law review? Yeah. I said, guess who's sitting in front of you? They're like, I'm like, right. So you got that. Now can we get past it? And they go, okay. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. So then we would start from there. I'd let them give me a little guff and I'm like, public pretender, whatever. Yeah. And then we get through it and go, okay, let's go with what you're looking at. Here's the pros, here's the cons, here's the offer, here's the evidence. I need to know what really happened, because if on the stand something else comes out, I'm good, but I'm not that good to be able to fix it on the fly. Like, I'm quick and we do improv for a living, but some things you just can't I can't use that word.
You can't untangle.
You can't untangle. Thank you very much. We cannot untangle those types of scenarios, right? If you come up and I get a surprise, you're going to get a surprise reaction. I will do it straight face. I will try to work around it, but I need to know from you really what happened in this scenario so that I can deal with it. And if there's some stuff going on, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Well, just know I can only operate based on the evidence I have and the information you provide. And so be honest with your attorney, as ugly as it might be. They're there to help you. You're paying them to help you. That's the point. And as I mentioned earlier, if you are not loving the vibe and you're not getting along, don't spend your money there. You have the right to move on and pick a new lawyer to help you out, right? That is ultimately, you want somebody who's on your side, and that doesn't mean you're right. That just means somebody who's listening and applying and giving you sound advice, and be open to the advice, right? There are plenty of people now that I feel bad for lawyers in current day where people come in and they're like, well, ChatGPT told me this, that, and the other. It's like, I would love to see ChatGPT's law degree, bar exam it passed, and what evidence it used for that. Can you get some stuff from Googling? Of course. Do you understand it in context and how a court is going to apply it? Probably not. And GPT is not going to know that necessarily either. And even if you give it to them, again, it's based on whatever training data it used. So if it's not training off of actual case law and court opinions, what is it training off of? Well, it's training on Reddit blogs, it's Reddit comments and personal blogs and other people's analysis of case law. Well, that doesn't mean that's what it actually says. So take that for a grain of salt. Does it help you kind of get a sort of vibe? So maybe you can figure out what questions to ask your lawyer? Maybe. So use it as a tool in that way, but don't think it's going to take over for your lawyer. It's not in that particular way. Try to think of other good lawyer advice. Like, we're human too. Please don't expect lawyers to work 24/7, although a lot of us do. It's an exhausting job, especially in criminal. They will be at the jail at 2 a.m. if they have to.
Why would you want that? I never understood, with any professions. I mean, this is maybe a little bit of self-insertion too here, right?
Well, no, it's cyber too, though. There's a distinct parallel.
Why would you want someone, you want them, if they're tackling the types of things that they're tackling, especially in the legal world, those are issues with very real and potentially long-tailed impacts.
That's
You
right.
want them to be at their best. They are, just to be completely transparent, they're incentivized to do a good job for you, because then it's just gonna, that's gonna help everyone, not only
That's right.
ethically, but as well as reputationally, so drumming up more. But like, it's everything's on the side of this person, this lawyer, this professional wants to do the utmost and get you what they can. They are truly your advocates. That is what the whole situation is set up to provide. Why are you not letting them rest? Why aren't you going to let them give
Well,
them?
you know why? I'll tell you why. I've been saying this well before AI and the speed of which we're running at. I've been saying this for more than a decade now. The continuous advancement of technology, as great as it can be,
Mhm.
has really bastardized the practice of law and people's expectations. People expect us to have instant answers, automatic reactions. And the reality is, just like you pointed out, you're paying me to think and play chess for a living. And that is not an instant answer. I need to go through and go, look, if we take this path, these are the doors, these are the windows, these are the exits, this is the dead end. If we take this path, well, maybe it's a different set of challenges that
Mhm.
you need to consider. If we take this other path, oh no, that takes to the pit of despair. We're not going to do that path, right? Or you can if you want, but just know the bog of eternal stench is waiting for you at the end of that pathway.
It's right
So
there. It's right there.
all
You're
the
asking
80s
for it.
references anyone can handle in this podcast, right? But truly, the faster people expect us and that
Mm.
instantaneous response, and that comes from messaging, emails, text messages. I mean, as a lawyer, my clients always had my cell phone. Some of them abused it. I would get text messages at 11 at night. Unless it was an emergency, I did not respond. I was like, look,
Mhm.
I need some sleep.
Yeah.
I will hook you up first thing in the morning type of thing, as long as I'm not in court, right? Or doing something else,
Sure.
because people forget that there is a vying of the time. I'm not available all the time for just your case. At any given
Mm.
moment when I was in private practice, I would have up to 300 cases in litigation at a time.
It's
That's a lot
madness.
of things that need time and attention and
Yeah.
detail, because I want to do a good job. Like, I pride myself on having never had a complaint. I have always had beyond happy clients, because I went above and beyond what they expected, because lawyers have a bad rep. Think about that, lawyers. If the bar is so low and you do just a bit more, you look like a hero because you've done just a bit more from what they've expected, right? And I always just did it because it's the right thing to do. Like, I take my job very seriously. I take the responsibility that someone has come to me with a problem and have asked
Mm.
me to help them navigate something that probably sucks in their life,
Mm.
or is uncomfortable, or is a challenge, or is heartbreaking, or whatever the situation might be. And I don't take that lightly. I'm there to help you through that situation as best as I can, give you the information so you can make sound decisions. But it is a two-way street. It is a mutual respect between you and the lawyer, the
Mm.
sharing of that information, and understanding that thinking things through will take time. And as things change and as evidence shows up in a case, my opinion may change. And that's what you want. You want me to adapt, just like your cyber folk. You want them to adapt to what the new information is. What is the new risk? What is the new vulnerability? What is the new potential threat that we have to look at? And what are the resulting consequences? Is it something we need to deal with? Is it something we can mitigate? It's very funny, the parallels between law and cyber.
It's
It
very.
really is very
Yeah.
similar thought process and terminology, which is why I get the GRC world,
Mm.
because I look at it in that same lens of, it's not just risks and vulnerabilities and threats. It's okay, but what is the damage that could result from those things? What's the likelihood it's going to result? What is the cost of that going to be to remediate it versus what it is to deal with it at the back end? And then give you that information to make the decision, which is the same thing you and your team have to do with your business all the time. So
Mhm.
it's a fascinating parallel. I kind of took a
It's
diversion there,
there.
but it's something I
Yeah.
saw very early on when I made the shift.
No,
So I think that's why I get along with cyber folk too, because I get it. The
listen.
pressure's on you. You've got to
Yeah.
give bad information, good information, tell people where the barriers are, give them the hard truth that they may not want. And we got to
Mm.
talk numbers. And that's the hard thing too. When people are hurting on emotions, they don't want to talk numbers. But you know what our system is based on? Numbers. If you get into the civil system and you're hurt, I'm sorries and apologies aren't what the court awards. They award damages. And what are damages?
Yeah.
Stuff, numbers, money, dollar signs. And how do you value that? And that's a whole conversation of, I think we talked about it brief. I can't remember if it was in this podcast or if I talked about it in something else, but they do look at what's an arm worth, what's a leg worth, what's a life worth, what's the value of that life worth. And it's hard and it's heavy. Be kind to your lawyers because it actually is a heavy emotional weight of what they're dealing with. You may look at them as, oh, they're stoic and this, that, and the other. But that's because they have to play a role to help you navigate a tough situation. You don't want me sitting there blubbering and crying in front of you. As much as I feel for you, you need me to be the strong person to help you get through whatever that next challenge is going to be, whatever that situation is, and to be that source of calm.
You know how terrified I would be? No, I you know how terrified I would be if I was on a work call and one of my lawyers was breaking down.
Yeah.
We've gone beyond the pale. This situation, we need to get off the call and regroup because you're spot on. You want that professional, steely, steady hand saying where that third rail is, where it's not, messaging on the side and going, hey, we need to bring it in here, or no, that sounds weird. Let's investigate. Let's dig down. And I don't know. It's my life experience has been such that I haven't seen. I get what you're saying in terms of sometimes you see us in a bad spot, so you have that bad association, and then there's the money aspect, but I always just feel more prepared, more ready to tackle what's gonna go on in day to day if one or both on the squad are there. And I can say honestly, and this is, I hope they listen because this is me, giving them super shout outs to both of them. But I know the rest of the team, right, the rest of the engineers, the rest of the analysts, I think we feel like, okay, we can tackle whatever sometimes nonsense or wild stuff we're going to hear on the other end of this call. Whatever gets revealed about certain things, we're going to be able to handle it calmly, navigate, like you said, the windows, the doors, avoid the dead ends, and try to at least, keep the mission going forward and navigate the pitfalls. I couldn't imagine doing it without those sorts of insights.
Well, that's why I have lawyers as friends as well. And as I talk to them, if it's their wheelhouse and I'm like, hey, I'm happy to pay you for your time. Let me know what it is. Right.
100%.
I appreciate, because if they're working with me, a quick call is one thing, right? I'm always happy to yep, can do that kind of thing, right? It's an easy, go look here, go see this, go, file that in the courthouse, right? That kind of, what would you do in discovery? And honestly, I don't charge all my friends, I'm not going to pretend I charge all my friends. I'm actually really bad. I don't pretty much charge a lot of my friends.
You mean you don't have the Stripe, you don't, not
no,
ready to.
I do not have Apple Pay. There's none of that. Venmo me at, no, we don't do any of that.
Here's my QR code and then we can chat. Man.
Well, that's why I'm like, look, if you pay me, then it's attorney-client privilege. I'm just telling you, this is not a privileged conversation if we're just spitballing here. I'm happy to spitball with you, but then I'm not your lawyer, right? In that scenario. And so I try to make that barrier very clear because the bar requires it. It's either you're retained and they think you're representing them and you're all in, or, so you've got to be very, very careful about just giving advice across past the turkey and have some sweet potatoes, right? And get me some extra pie on that.
Yeah.
So you've got to be very careful. And so that's why you hear me even hedging as we do our podcast, not because I'm trying to mince words, but I've got to be very careful about the ethics and everything else of what I say and how I say it. And so that nobody listening goes, oh, that's legal advice. And she's my lawyer. And I'm like, no, talk to your lawyer. I can help you navigate that well, here's things you can ask. Here's things you should inquire about, things you might expect in your experience. But again, every experience is going to be different. That's why you hear us say, it depends. And it's always a running joke. And as I've gotten older, the more I have to say it depends, because it really does. Much like cyber, law is generally not binary unless it's anticipated killing you and I killed you and there's evidence and I killed you. Like that. Did I kill you? Yeah. Okay. That's probably
but that's in the minority
murder
of situations. No, I would imagine.
Say that again?
It's in the minority of situations.
For sure.
That's not always that's very a small sliver where it's cut and dry at that
Correct.
point. You deal in the gray, and
Right.
the profession is there to navigate that gray.
And if you want to laugh, so you know what the gray in that is? How do you know if I'm in my right mind when I put that plan in place? So I
There
could
you
have a
go.
mental health issue. Think we can all agree on that?
Sure.
But no,
Hey,
but
I feel
if
you.
that was
I
right,
can get out of pocket.
well, say I suddenly snap and I've decided now I plan I'm going to, do this, commit this horrible crime. And they do, and they bring in some mental health professionals like she just lost, she was not there. She actually did not know, and she didn't have the mens rea. She didn't have that criminal mind element. Well, then maybe it's not so cut and dry, right? So things even that we see on the surface, and I think that's a valuable lesson too, just briefly as we wrap this one up, because it went way longer than we thought, because Lawyers as Homies is actually a tough but invaluable, they're not your
100%.
enemy. They really are there to help. They're also not your friend, right? They're going to give you that tough love because you're paying them to give you tough love. That's the reality. If the dress isn't pretty, we're not going to tell you the dress is pretty.
Listen, you shouldn't have to pay your friends to talk to you. Like if you're paying someone, you should normally. I want to say there's weird walks we can take on that note. We'll put that aside there. But if you're paying, I don't know. It's just
Lawyers is a service, right? Legal is a service.
It
and I think
is.
it helps to understand, and there is customer service on both sides and that mutual respect and everything else that goes with it.
Of course.
And I forgot what my other point was. I think I've blown past it at this point. But
Took us down a weird
if
path
you
there.
all can remember where you think my brain was, I think it was on the black and white binary type of thing. And in cyber, I think that's where I was going with it, is that it's the same for you all, right? It's like, well, this could be a problem, but maybe it's not. And yes and no. And it's not, are we secure? Are we not secure?
Oh, I hate that.
Well, I could lock the front door, but he just broke the back window, right?
I hate this.
mean,
or is this allowed?
Right. Is this allowed?
You want to see like pull my hair or come off camera because I got to fix my face? Hit me with I need permission to XYZ. Well, the thing I identified, I think the most with one of the points you made was, don't lie to us.
Right.
Tell us how bad it is. If you sit
Did you click
with your
the
cyber
link?
professional, did you click the link? How did you build it? Do you know where the data is going? If you don't, that's an answer. And listen, I'm not going to lie to you and say I'm not silently judging you, but I'm going to keep it professional, at least there. I'm just a human being.
Yeah,
Sometimes
right.
you just go,
That's
listen,
right.
this is the fourth time you've tried to build this thing and you're doing, but at least then and there, the point is to protect you. You're in my squad. You're
That's
part of the organization that I'm entrusted with safeguarding and also enabling that technology to be used for what we do it for. So then, but just be forthcoming. I can't protect what I don't know about. I can't protect data that I don't see or understand where it flows. And y'all should. So that touched me in terms of where our two professions really align. It's just, listen, I can't help
You're
you.
an honorary lawyer.
Oh, goodness gracious. Don't say
But
that.
it's that same analysis. And that actually, it's funny, as we talk to educational institutions, that's really the part that's missing, because the more we the cognitive decline, right, is very common, as they're starting to show with the more of AI use, right? Not to beat another AI dead horse, but like, okay. And
it
so
doesn't have feelings. It's fine.
it's right. It doesn't care unless it's listening, and my SIRI is going to yell at me
Suddenly
later on, like, I heard you.
A robot horse just jumps through your window and starts speaking out. Oh, God.
I find a horse head in my bed. Thank you, Siri. So another thing to think about lawyers is when you're paying them, right? And we're talking about that retainer issue, you're paying them to reserve that time to give thought and application to your matter and to dedicate that time. It doesn't mean access 24/7, but by spending the money, you're competing against other people who also need those same services. So when you're putting your money in, you're reserving that time for that lawyer service for you to be able to do the work for you. They only can take on so many hours on the day and so many clients and so much work. And so that is where that higher price point comes in, because imagine how busy the $25 an hour lawyer would be if they were of any quality. But that is a big if, right? But you're paying for the experience, you're paying for the time, and that opportunity to work with them for that time period. So when they're working with you, they're not working with others. And so that is something else to consider as you're hiring a lawyer,
Great point.
Just like anybody else, I lost my train of thought. And that's why lawyers need sleep.
Listen, lawyers are human. Lawyers need sleep. And also yet another, I think, piece of evidence that we're not AI ourselves.
That is very true.
So
Yeah,
that
it had to
works.
do with your experience. I know that in that area, but you know what? If you and the audience can guess what it is, or you want to talk further about any of the topics we covered, please put it in the comments. Send us a message. Hit us up anywhere the podcast can be found. Find us on LinkedIn. We are always happy to chat and discover what topics you want to go through next with us. You know, this is generally a tough conversation because ew lawyers is generally the sentiment. And we hope that as part of this conversation, maybe it's a little less ooh and a little more like, maybe they're here
Mhm.
to actually help, you know, especially the ones that you hire and you bring on as part of your team. It's really learning to use them and their knowledge and their skills to help you achieve your goals as you work through the different challenges. And, you know, when they're trying to keep you out of the bog and the pits, maybe take that advice.
They're there to help you. They're on your side.
Yep. So with that, we will wrap up another exciting episode of the Cyber Mettle Podcast.
Mhm.
Omar, I will leave it to you to finish this one up. What do you think?
As always, it's a pleasure. Lawyers as homies, you can never have enough good friends in your back pocket that bring that sort of knowledge and professionalism to pretty much everything they touch. So with that being said, stay safe, keep it cyber metal. We'll be back shortly.